in broad strokes, who did you hire for the poll? What was the intent? What did you want to find out at Common Cause?
Yeah, so in collaboration with a few local groups, as well as some independent individuals, and with funding from the Thornburg Foundation, we were able to commission a poll through Research and Polling, who's a well-known polling firm here out of New Mexico. And really the goal was to see where New Mexicans feel about modernizing or professionalizing our legislature. What we can do to help improve the process. And as you mentioned, there's three key goals really circulating around it. Those being, actually paying our legislators who are currently unpaid, receive a stipend, and of course, hiring them full-time paid staff, which they currently do not have, and a lot of New Mexicans are unaware of. Mm-hmm. And lastly, extending the length of the sessions, which a lot of people are still unsure of, that we have 30 and 60-day sessions. So to cram in all of the various pieces of legislation to try to help improve our laws in the state. So those are really the three main components that are circulating around this poll.
Let's talk about session. What was the first one you did? Session length. What were the results there? Because again, I think if you've not lived other places, and this is not a put down for folks certainly who live here, but understanding what a full-time session looks like and feels like versus how we do it now is an awfully big leap. What did you guys find when it came to session length?
Yeah, so this was actually one of the largest numbers that we saw. I mean, we saw a vast majority across party lines. I want to say it was around 70% of those who were surveyed do feel like we need to have lengthened sessions. Now, we often see in the final weeks of either the 30 and or the 60-day session where bills are just being crammed into committees and passed in the middle of the night, when the most of the public are not having a watchful eye on what's going on. By extending our sessions, not only do we provide more time for the public to be involved in the legislative session, but also another important component is giving our legislators and their administrative staff time to properly research the legislation that is before them. Yeah. So they're not making, decisions late at night when they're already tired. Mm-hmm. I think we do need to provide them with a little bit more time as well as resources to make the good decisions on behalf of the people of New Mexico, make sure they have all the information needed and the components needed to move forward with that legislation, to actually make sure it can be appropriately implemented, not just passed.
Go ahead and tell the folks what you guys found about how people think legislators are being paid now versus the reality of how they're being paid now.
Yeah, absolutely. But first, what I'd like to actually bring up is, what we see a lot in mainstream media. Mainstream media, we hear a lot of talk about DC. We hear a lot of talk about, the slow down, the bog down, nothing's happening. They get paid, buku bucks to come and go. They get to fly back and forth, unlimited use of the US mail. And immediately, there's association with our local legislators. And that's just not true. So there's a disconnect there from an understanding of how legislation and our legislators operate in the DC spectrum versus our local legislators. Mm-hmm. So in doing so, we posed a question to likely voters who were surveyed. How much do you think that our legislators are compensated? And I'll just jump to one of the biggest numbers that really blew me away was only 2% of those were surveyed knew that our legislator is unpaid. Only 2%. Wow. So if you can imagine, that's an awful lot of people who have a misconception that, we have individuals that are going to Santa Fe and think they're making big bucks. Right. And that's just not the case. And I think, again, that goes back to where we need to, properly educate our citizens of what exactly our legislators do and how they're compensated. Mm-hmm. And, within those numbers, we found that there was 64% of likely voters, again, this is across the board, Democrats, Republicans, as well as individuals who are unaffiliated, who now support the concept of paying our legislators. Mm. So I think that is, again, very good numbers. It shows, that there are individuals within New Mexico, a vast majority of individuals in New Mexico, who would like to see our legislators paid, compensated for the work that they are doing on behalf of the people.
As an ex-congressional staffer, I'm very sensitive to this, and staffer in other places too. What do we gain from having more staff for folks out there? Because again, we're talking about value for the money. If this is going to go out there to the public, someone's going to have to make a value case, basically saying, if we pay this amount of money, here's what you can expect that's wildly better than what we're having now. And not just a little bit, but way, way better. What do we gain with more staff? You touched on it, lobbyists are de facto staff right now. But again, that pitch to the public, how does that get put out there?
In addition to limiting the power in your lobbyists, I think one of the biggest benefits that you're going to see, and I think this is something that you can appreciate from your past life as well, is constituent services.
Yes.
I mean, right now our legislature is out of session. So the vast majority, with the exception of those in leadership, do not have an individual to assist them with constituent services. What people do not understand is our legislatures themselves are receiving hundreds of correspondence daily through email, through text message, through social media, and that one person is operating as their own office. That one legislature is responsible for getting back to each and every single one of those correspondence. So a lot of times you will have a constituent who has a very important issue that gets lost and buried in hundreds of emails, hundreds of text messages, hundreds of voicemails. I mean, quite often I hear in talking to the public, well, there's no point in me calling my legislator, their voicemail is full, without an understanding that they may have a full-time job in addition to having their family at home, in addition to having to respond to each and every single correspondence themselves. Mm-hmm. So by providing them with a staff member who can assist them with those constituent services, attending meetings that they may not be able to attend because there's so many different ones that may be scheduled around the same time. Right. A lot of these districts are quite large. So it would be very difficult for someone to travel from the northern part of their district to the southern part of the district to make another community meeting. It's a very difficult task for our legislatures to perform on their own.
Likely voters between 18 and 34 polled strongest in favor of paying legislators, with 78% voting in favor, which is an unbelievable number. Why do you think the support for pay is so strong with newer voters, Gen Z and millennials, compared to older voters? Between 35 and 64, it came in at 64%. In seniors, only 56%. That is the future speaking loudly here?
I think they absolutely are. And, this is a trend that we have been seeing over the last couple of years, right? I mean, mm-hmm. If you look at voter turnout, even we're seeing typically you used to be able to look at our older generations as being the vast majority of individuals who turn out and vote. Right. And with a lot of key issues surrounding college, surrounding healthcare, surrounding retirement, the longevity of Social Security, we're seeing a lot of younger generations turning out to vote, being vocal, and participating in the overall democracy of our country. And, I think this poll shows that our younger generations are becoming more engaged and have a clear understanding of what is happening within our legislature and within politics, and would like to see some change that's going to help improve them and other generations beyond.
That's going to be heard, I think. That's where I think this poll is going to have a lot of legs. It really has just uncorked a lot of interesting things. I'm wondering, Mario, if there's another poll yet to be put out there. I mean, there's always the initial poll that gets people to open their eyes. I'm wondering if another one from Common Cause down the road to talk about these things like length of session, like what would you prefer? Those kind of open-end questions. Is that something in the planning stages?
Well, that's actually a great question. And we do have a second phase coming on. What we're looking at doing is putting on a few focus groups. That way we can have some more in-depth conversations with New Mexicans about these various topics. Rather than just ask them a few questions, give them some actual background and hear some feedback from them on what do they feel would be the best avenue. As you mentioned, should we go to a 60-day? Should we go to a full year? Mm-hmm. What is it that you feel would be best to address these various shortfalls that we currently have in our legislative sessions?